This video is going to continue our exploration into Unit 1, and we're going to quickly look at the Articles of Confederation. Now, the Articles of Confederation was our first government for the United States of America. We declared independence from Great Britain on July 4th of 1776. The colonies are now becoming states as they are forming their own governments in every state. Each state creates a constitution where they have their own government established, they have their own laws, and they have their own leadership. But these are 13 separate entities in 13 separate governments, 13 separate leaders. So they have to think about, if they ever work together, who is going to actually take control and be the sole leader. As I just said, every state has their own detailed government. If you look at this, it shows you how detailed it was. Now, at the point in time when the Articles of Confederation was designed and written, we were still in the midst of the Revolutionary War. Great Britain is still sending hordes and masses of soldiers over to America to occupy territory, so the people have to figure out a way to fight back. You have a large British army against a small number of colonial soldiers. So what they think about is each of the 13 states should work together. That way we can raise a large army instead of having 13 separate small armies that could be easily defeated by invading British soldiers. So what they do in America, they decide to form a confederation, and that's what the Articles of Confederation comes from. Now, a confederation is a political system where the people are coming together, or where the states are coming together for a sole purpose. The states have all the powers, and there's no united national government. Now, the states come together just for the sole purpose of fighting off the British and maintaining their American independence. The national or federal government is only going to do whatever the states allow them to do. That's the biggest issue with a confederation. If the states don't want to do it, then all of them don't necessarily have to do it. Some may choose to, some may not. The Articles of Confederation was simply a league of friendship, and that's what it became known as. As there weren't a lot of powers that were distributed for government, each state still pretty much maintained their own independence and their own forms of government. The reason why they did not clearly define all of these powers or explicitly state what could and could not be done is that the colonists just experienced what life was like under an absolute monarchy, under the King George in England. They didn't want to necessarily give all these powers to a leader because they might abuse them, and they didn't want to face that again. The Articles of Confederation was a weak government. As I just said, there was no united government that can make sure that every state followed the rules and the guidelines. Under the Articles of Confederation, the only reason for the unity was simply just to fight the British soldiers as they were entering America. As a united legislator, the Confederation Congress couldn't do nothing. They couldn't really do anything, so it was a pointless, powerless government. So, these next couple of slides are just going to show you some of the weaknesses of the Articles of Confederation, some of the stuff we've already had on previous slides. So the weaknesses, just to note, is that there was no power to tax, no power to enforce laws, they had no national courts, they had no central governor or executive. There was no way to draw a tax from every state that they had, so all 13 states they had their own separate taxes, but that money didn't go towards a collective purpose. As I already stated, each state could not enforce laws of another state, and they could not be forced to enforce laws that each state could agree to. They didn't have a national court. Each state had their own separate court and their own separate law system. And there was no one person who would take on the role of a president or a chief executive who would tell all the people what to do. All right. Looking at this last slide, these are just more weaknesses that existed. And basically, this created a government where it was dysfunctional and it simply would not be able to operate for these 13 states. So they had to think about all the things that were wrong and go back to the drawing board. Just note that the Articles of Confederation created a weak and ineffective government.